And we are live.
Good. Pleasant good evening. Yes, pleasant good evening to our listeners. We are live as we promised. First of all, we have to apologize for yesterday. Yesterday was just we actually kind of, but I sort of double booked myself in the sense that I had some other engagements that I forgot about, or only realized that I had to do later on. So hence the reason we had to do the live today. So I know we sort of throw off some persons, but I hoped that still individuals would be aware of it and of course would make themselves available this afternoon. So we're discussing two very important issues today, and that of course is the topic associated with hypertension and poor circulation. And poor circulation is something that I have spoken about on numerous occasions. When I say numerous occasions, I mean numerous occasions. But it never loses its sense of importance. It never loses its essence in the sense that, circulation or poor circulation continues to wreak havoc in a number of lives or in lives or the lives of a number of individuals, especially persons who are diabetic. So we're going to be discussing how what really is poor circulation, what is the importance of having good or proper circulation, and of course what do we at Batson and Associates do uh, to really assist persons in that aspect of poor circulation. We're also going to touch on hypertension, and the reason we're going to touch on hypertension, of course, is because again hypertension, like poor circulation, affects hundreds of thousands of individuals, hundreds of millions persons, or hundreds of millions of persons around the world, rather. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we know because of our very high diabetic numbers, that is a situation that we all have to deal with, or that individuals would have to deal with. So those are the two things that we will be discussing. You're listening to Dr. Jason Batson, the Senior Medical Director at Batson and Associates, where we support your health naturally. Let me say, of course, a pleasant good afternoon to Ms. Vidya Abdul, first in the house. Good evening to all. Keep in mind, we are live on our social media platforms. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. And on YouTube, we are Batson and Associates Trinidad. On TikTok, we are Batson and Associates. So on those socials, you can, of course, add us, like us, share us, because, the information is pertinent and someone you may know, maybe someone who may need help as regards to this particular issue. So let's talk about hypertension. Keep in mind, it is a question and answer, so we would be entertaining questions on both of our platforms, Facebook, Batson and Associates Limited, and of course, our Instagram shortly, which is Batson and Associates TT. Let me say a pleasant good afternoon, good evening to Mr. Christopher Samuel, Miss Lenora Lovell Brooks, Miss Imagine Hanawi. Pleasant good evening to you. So when we're speaking about hypertension, we know why hypertension is so deadly. And the reason why high blood pressure is so deadly is because it can actually cause serious damage to blood vessels within a very short space of time. I'll say it again. Hypertension is dangerous because it can cause serious damage to blood vessels in a very short space of time. What does that mean? So we know we have three types of blood vessels mainly in the body. We have, of course, our capillaries, which are the finest or the smallest or narrowest of blood vessels. We have our veins, which are a bit larger than the capillaries. And then we have arteries, which are the largest in diameter and circumference. But of course, they are not as elastic as the veins. So it means that if you have hypertension, you actually have high pressure in your arteries. Now we know how the blood vessels are designed in the human body is primarily like a tree. So you have the trunk, which is that large part of the tree, sorry, which is actually going to be the artery. Then you have the branches, which are smaller than the large trunk, which would be or would represent the veins. And then you have the very small branches or fine branches that the leaves are attached to, and that is actually the capillaries. So that whole framework with a large trunk, then branches, then finer branches is primarily what our circulatory system resembles, right? We have two types of circulation primarily in the body. We have pulmonary circulation, which is circulation above the heart, and we have systemic circulation, which is circulation below the heart. So it means that if you have hypertension, and this is where I am explaining the point that I made, it can damage blood vessels in a very short space of time. So it means if you have elevated blood pressure, it can actually rupture an artery, it can rupture a vein, it could also damage your capillaries. So that is the reason why hypertension is so dangerous, because it can cause problems or it can damage blood vessels within a very short space of time. Okay. Again, a pleasant good evening to Miss Annie Grant, Miss Fiola Rodder, Miss Grace Warner Headley. Good evening to you, as well as Fiola Rodder is asking, I was at Red Edge Mall on Friday. I await a call from them soon. Okay, great. No problem. Yes, that's regarding some of our teas that we're still waiting on. We get in those. In addition to some other products that we have, of course, balanced circulation is in stock. We also have a number of other products that assist in this particular issue. So back to what we're discussing as regards to hypertension. So it means if you are hypertensive, for example, let me say a pleasant good afternoon to Natasha Phillips, Kaharid Fret. Right, I think I pronounced that correct. Ingrid Hannibal, pleasant good evening to you, as well as Anissa Rahman. Right, so when you're looking at hypertension, you actually have primary hypertension and secondary hypertension. And this is something that I had discussed a while ago to help individuals as it relates to understanding what high blood pressure is. Because if you have hypertension, you're normally recommended specific type medication. You're recommended calcium channel blockers. You would also be recommended diuretics. You would have things like Benadryl. You have things as well as Lasix. In some cases, you have nifedipine, atenolol. So depending on the doctor you go to, or depending on your diagnosis in terms of the type of hypertension you have, may determine the type of medication that you may use. Or sometimes they just do they give you one, and if that agrees with you, well, then okay, stay on that. If it doesn't agree with you, then they change it up a bit. Because we know, for example, enalapril, in some instances, causes individual to have a very bad cough. So you find a lot of persons, enalapril doesn't really agree with them, so they may give you nifedipine. In some cases, they may even give you, you have Ataclan, you also have atenolol. So you have a wide range of medications that are available to you, but they fall in the specific category of calcium channel blocker, beta blockers, as well as diuretics. So now, when you look at hypertension and how many persons suffer from hypertension, one of the things as well that I always strive to help clients to understand is that you should test your blood pressure on a regular basis if you are hypertensive. In fact, even if you're not hypertensive as yet, you should at least, a blood pressure monitor is not $1 million. I mean, even if it is, you are on a budget, it's something you can save. I believe you can get a very good one for anywhere in the vicinity of 300 and something, 400 and something dollars. You're not going to spend more than $500. And because of how important and vital it is to monitor your blood pressure, it is very important to do so. So I appeal to individuals who may be hypertensive to ensure that you have a proper, well-functioning monitor and you do test your blood pressure on a regular basis in order to maintain your figures. And the reason for that is because if you leave your blood pressure to go out of sync, it can end up in a very serious situation where you can actually end up with renal failure. Are you aware that a lot of persons who have kidney problems or those kidney problems are as a result of high blood pressure? So there are a lot of persons who are on dialysis rather because of hypertension. So hence the reason why hypertension is not something you should is not something that you should play with. It is something that you should monitor, and it is also something that you should understand from an individual perspective. When I say from an individual perspective, don't automatically assume because you are hypertension, you are like everyone else who has hypertension. And that's the assumption that a lot of persons use, and hence the reason they do not take care of themselves or pay serious attention to themselves. Now, keep in mind, we do have our regular testing, our live nutritional blood cell analysis, as well as our magnetic resonance analysis, which is going to actually give you the opportunity to really understand circulation and how circulation operates in the body. And that is something we do at Batson and Associates. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Uta Young, Miss Grace Williams. She mentions it's a good topic. Yes, it is. Miss Rihanna Francis, good evening to you. Miss Cinti Salandi, good evening to you as well. So let me, of course, give you those telephone numbers and locations. Keep in mind, we are located on the first floor of Money Talks building. That's Money Talks building in Montrose, Shogunas. That telephone number, of course, is 222-8261. That's 222-8261, as well as 314-9975. That's 314-9975, as well as 222-8261. That office is located on the first floor of Money Talks building in Montrose, Shogunas. We also in Debe. Debe is the corner of Ramsamouch Trace and the SS Erin Main Road in Debe. That office, of course, would be located, as I mentioned, the corner of Ramsamouch Trace and the SS Erin Main Road in Debe. Red Edge Mall, Western Main Road, St. James, and of course, Tobago, the Triangle Building in Scarborough, Tobago. Mr. Edmund Willis, good evening to you. Miss Petronella Joy Felix, good evening to you as well. So we're discussing high blood pressure. Keep in mind, even though we're discussing high blood pressure and poor circulation, it is not the only topic that we are discussing. If you may have a question regarding a health issue or the products and services of Batson and Associates, you can feel free to message. Okay, Miss Sintra L. Ramada, good evening to you. Miss Shanti Ramrup, good evening to you as well. Keep in mind, we are live on our social media platforms. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. Mr. David Scobie, greetings to you and yours, Dr. Batson. Thank you so very much, sir. Same to you as well. So, how is it that hypertension can affect your kidneys? That was a question that someone asked. And the thing is, a number of individuals don't really understand how hypertension affects the kidneys. Now, a lot of persons believe that if you have diabetes, you're going to have kidney problems in a short space of time. Now, that is true to an extent, but I could tell you this. If you have hypertension, and you do not mind your business and manage your hypertension properly, really deal with the root cause of the problem, it is just a matter of time before you are told that you have renal problems. Hypertension is one of the main causes of kidney failure. Main causes. And the reason for that is because if you understand the anatomy and physiology of the kidneys, your kidneys have very fine blood vessels. Remember, your kidneys are primarily the filter of the body. So those very fine network of vessels in the kidneys, if you have high blood pressure, which is high pressure in your arteries, and that very high pressure, so imagine pressure coming from a large blood vessel into a smaller blood vessel. It means that the pounds per square inch, or what they call the PSI, in a large blood vessel, when it reaches a smaller blood vessel with that force, is actually going to cause the blood vessels, the smaller blood vessels, to stretch and actually cause damage and leakage. And that's primarily what happens to individuals who are hypertensive, who eventually end up with renal failure. Okay, let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Carol Collymore. She says good. She says interesting. Miss Jean Flame to get a supply of products. I know, my dear. You can of course call the office. There are a lot of things that we actually have in the country just awaiting clearance and some stuff. So that's something that's going to be available to you guys in a very short frame of space of time, rather. So of course you could always get onto the office and let them know what you need to get. Okay, again, those telephone numbers quickly for the Shogunas office. That's 222-8261. That's 222-8261, as well as 314-9975. That's 222-8261, as well as 314-9975. Ms. Donnell, it's a pleasant good evening to you. She says, good evening, Dr. Batson and Associates. You are so right about blood pressure. As a Hugo take patients, as a Hugos take patients' blood pressure when it is high, and we talk to them about it. They refuse to take care of it and will return with the same thing. Oh, okay, as a hygienist, yes, dental hygienist. Good. Yeah, definitely. Miss Cynthia Salandi says, what causes bleeding on the brain? Well, the thing is, if you have bleeding in the brain, which is known as an aneurysm, or you have different things that could cause bleeding in the brain, because strokes can also cause bleeding in the brain if you have a hemorrhagic stroke, which is a bleeding stroke. That is primarily caused by elevated pressure in those same blood vessels that we just discussing. Remember, as I said, you have, when you're looking at your blood vessels, you have your arteries, which are the largest, then you have your veins, excuse me, and then you have your capillaries. It means that with the capillaries, the veins, the arteries, when you have elevated blood pressure, especially above, there's something known as pulmonary circulation, which is circulation above your heart. There's also something known as pulmonary hypertension, which is hypertension above the heart, which means you have problems with circulation in the brain. So your symptomology, for example, would be dizziness, um, problems with cognitive function, brain fog, uh, problems with your memory, especially short-term memory. You may have problems with your vision. So all of a sudden you have blurred vision. You're seeing like circles, you're seeing like lines. All those are indication of poor circulation in the cerebral hemisphere, which if left unchecked could actually cause problems with strokes or can cause a brain aneurysm, which is actually, or which can result in bleeding in blood vessels in the brain. So it's very important to really monitor that. Headaches as well, people who have very debilitating headaches, you know yourself. There are some persons that have headaches. When they get those headaches, they can't do anything. You know yourself. It is very important to pay attention to that. If you have glaucoma, which is high ocular pressure, that is also an indication, sorry, of elevated or poor circulation or poor pulmonary circulation. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Pam Powell. She says, good night, listening from England. Good evening to you. I know you're, it's very close for your bedtime over there, based on the amount of hours you guys are ahead of us. But of course, thank you so very much for joining us. Keep in mind, we are live on our social media platforms. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. On YouTube, we are Batson and Associates Trinidad. And on TikTok, we are Batson and Associates. You're listening to Dr. Jason Batson, the Senior Medical Director at Batson and Associates, where we support your health naturally. This evening, we're discussing poor circulation and hypertension. We touched on pulmonary hypertension, which, of course, is a more serious form of hypertension. That's the other thing as well. There are a number of persons who are hypertensive, and they don't even know the type of hypertension they have. So that's also a serious issue that you need to look into, because, as I mentioned, not all hypertension is the same. You know, one of the problems that a number of individuals do is that they automatically assume that because you may be diagnosed with a particular issue that you know someone else has, then you think is the same and you think you could use the same medication. Some people mix up medication, some people borrow medication. That's not something that you should do. Pay attention to the medication that your doctor would have given you and monitor your numbers so that the next time you have your appointment with your doctor, you can now share information. Very, very important. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Cathy Chess Noriega. She says, good night, everyone. Miss Jean Flame said, would circulation tea assist with pulmonary circulation? In fact, all other? Yes, it would. The circulation tea would help with all aspects of circulation. The balanced circulation tea that we usually have, which is a wild-crafted tea, that tea was specifically designed for dealing with hypertension. I mean, it was a circulation or is a circulation tea in general, but its main focus is really on hypertension. And everyone who used that tea actually got some really good results. We are waiting to get our that restocked, because that's a product that, of course, goes very quickly, like most of the things that we carry at Batson and Associates. So that's something that you can always call and place your order for. Miss Jacqueline Burridge, she says, good night, everyone. Mr. Rinaldo Dick, good night to you as well. So, yeah, so that is something that you need to pay very close attention to. Monitor your blood pressure. One of the things that you should do with blood pressure, we have a question here, is that when should you test your blood pressure? That's a very good question. The thing is, in monitoring your blood pressure should be checked at a specific time, at a specific time daily, but at the same time. And the reason for that, let's say, for example, you are accustomed testing your blood pressure 30 minutes after you get up. So you get up, you say your prayers, whatever the case may be. You give yourself some time, you may drink a glass of water, and you test your blood pressure half an hour after you get up. It means, excuse me, it means that you also need to monitor that consistently at around that time. So in other words, let's say Monday, if you check your blood pressure 6 o'clock in the morning, on Tuesday, don't go and check at 6 o'clock in the evening and then try to compare. No. Try and test your blood pressure around the same time so that you'd actually be able to, to get some empirical data in terms of the testing that you do. Averages could be done. We could look at different aspects where maybe the systolic one's improving, or maybe the systolic is good, but the diastolic, which is a lower number, maybe a bit elevated above 85, above 90, those type of things. So it's very important to really pay close attention to that. Okay, so that's what you need to do. Test the blood pressure at around the same time on a daily basis. If you are someone who is rather diagnosed as hypertensive and you are on medication, then all the more reason for you to keep a log, all the more reason for you to track your figures, so that you could actually be able to now deal with the root cause of the problem. Because that's what we do. Cardiovascular problems. It plays a significant role in poor circulation because it means that you are now in a situation where you fat or plaque could actually build up in the blood vessels and actually cause problems. Let me apologize. We just had a little technical difficulty there. I believe we disconnected from Facebook, and we have connected back, so we should get back, you guys. In that particular instance, with the high blood pressure, it is very important that we do that blood analysis because, as I mentioned, it actually gives us real-time information on how your blood cells are, how your red blood cells are formed, or how they look in terms of their formation. If you have problems with the blood cells, there's something known as erythrocyte aggregation. Erythrocytes are red blood cells. Aggregate means to stick together. So it means like when they talk about cement to make aggregate, right? If you have erythrocyte aggregation, it means that your red blood cells are sticking together. Why is that a problem, and how does that affect circulation? Well, for a number of reasons. Remember, blood is responsible for doing what? Transporting oxygen and nutrients to what? Cells. Cells give you tissues, tissues give you organs, organs give you organ systems. Good. So it's very important that that circulation to the blood vessels be optimal so that you could have proper oxygen exchange. If those blood cells are stuck together, you actually lose the blood cells' ability to transport oxygen, and hence you now have situations where your circulation could now be compromised. Very, very important. So that's something that you need to pay very, very close attention to. Next question. This question is a question that was actually sent to us on one of our numbers, and it's a WhatsApp. And what the person was asking is that can elevated blood pressure cause strokes? Good question. And the answer, of course, is yes. Most persons who have gotten strokes, do your research, you would realize that they are hypertensive. Most of them. Because that's the point I was making at the genesis of the conversation. Blood pressure is dangerous because blood pressure could damage or rupture your blood vessels in a very short space of time. It's a window of time. There is something known as a TIA. It's an acronym for transient ischemic attack. And persons who suffer from TIAs or transient ischemic attacks would realize that that is actually a mini stroke or a small stroke. Now, when we're discussing strokes, there's no such thing as a small stroke. I always tell persons that's like saying a small earthquake. Earthquake is an earthquake. They can do damage, of course, based on the stronger or the more severe the earthquake is. And similar with hypertension, but hypertension is a red flag and a marker to indicate serious debilitating problems in the body. If it is left unchecked and one doesn't really deal with the root cause of the problem, you're going to actually be in a situation where you can end up with impaired eyesight. In fact, if you have hypertension bad enough, it can actually cause you to go blind temporarily or in some cases permanently blind. That's to tell you how serious hypertension is. Very, very serious. Okay, Percy Clover says, if your platelets are clumping, what causes that? Well, if you have your platelet, the thing is your platelets, when they are actually working to cause or to stop bleeding in the body, where they actually form a scab or a plug, that's natural. But if you have platelets that are very high in number, or your platelets very low, you have abnormal platelet counts, you have platelets sticking together, it is an indication of unhealthy blood, which could mean a number of things. It could mean deficiency in greens. It could also mean deficiency as it relates to minerals, manganese, magnesium, selenium, zinc. And because of these deficiencies, you're now in a situation where the body doesn't function properly. Okay, so feel free to give us a call or visit. Keep in mind those telephone numbers and locations, and that's special that we have with our blood analysis and magnetic resonance analysis. You can feel free to visit our offices. We are located on the first floor of Money Talks building in Montreal, Chaguanas. That telephone number for Chaguanas is 222-8261. That's 222-8261. St. James is Red Edge Mall, Western Main Road, St. James. That number for St. James is 220-8113. That's 220-8113. Debe is the corner of Ramsamooch Trace and the SS Erie Main Road in Debe. That number for Debe is 223-7515. That's 223-7515. Tobago is, of course, Red Edge Mall, Tobago is the Triangle Building. My apologies, in Scarborough, Tobago. That number for Tobago is 226-4553. That's 226-4553. Mr. Kyle Thomas says, is green tea good for hypertension? It depends. A green tea that is not excessively high in caffeine is going to help someone with hypertension. However, if it is very high in caffeine, then it can cause some problems with hypertension. So you have to be careful in that particular aspect, because some persons who are hypertensive tend to be very sensitive to caffeine. And then, of course, remember, caffeine does have some diuretic properties associated with it, which is why coffee or excessive amounts of coffee is not a good thing to indulge in, because it does cause serious problems. I mean, a lot of persons I know, when you tell persons to stop drinking coffee, they want to die because they believe that, it is healthy for them and they can't do without it. However, in moderation, it's all well and good. But when you abuse it, like what most people do, which means drink it on a daily basis, you actually put yourself in a lot of problems. Because remember, coffee is a diuretic and a stimulant. So in those instances, Mr. Thomas, in that case, green tea, once the caffeine content or the amount of caffeine is not excessively high, then it means that you need to be careful. Jean Flame is asking about decaffeinated green teas. You can use those, but you need to be careful with decaffeinated teas, because decaffeinated teas have to go through a process. And a lot of the process that it goes through, it strips a lot of things from the tea. So a lot of the times, the nutritional benefits that the tea would have had normally, they no longer have them because of that whole process of decaffeinating. It's like granulated sugar. They have to do certain things to give it that color, and they have to break it down and process it. So because of that amount of processing, you find the product is not as healthy as you would like it to be. So that you would not be able to derive maximum benefits from the product. So that's something, again, that you need to pay very, very close attention to. Keep in mind, we are live on our social media platforms. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. You're listening to Dr. Jason Batson, the Senior Medical Director at Batson and Associates. My partner, Shaz 007. Boy, good evening to you, sir. Keep in mind, as I said, we are live on our social media platforms. This is a question and answer session, so please feel free to ask your questions. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Miss Claudia Savary, a very good client of mine. She says, "Good night, doc. Can a food detox help with circulation in your body? Just had one and I'm feeling great." And yes, it can. It most certainly can. Thank you so very much for reminding me of that, Miss Savary. That is something we do at Batson and Associates for detox. And the food detox, because of its ability to actually detoxify the body, would help with circulation. So those of you who may have problems or experiencing pins and needles, cramping in your calves, burning under your feet, those of you who may have problems with swollen ankles, edema, which is swelling in the legs, that is something you can also take advantage of. Very soon we'll have our food detox readily available at all our locations. Right now, Chagonas is primarily the main office where we do it, but all the other offices, St. James, Davy is going to have those, because we actually had some electricity challenges in some of those offices, and you know, getting the area to do it. So that is something that we're going to actually do at, or be resuming at all of our offices. So we look forward to that, where we would actually be able to facilitate all our clients in all of our areas. Ms. Jean Flame says, "Thanks again. Also, blood analysis would determine lack of minerals, zinc, etc." It would, because I mean, we can send you for our next blood panel, because when you're looking at minerals, there are a number of things that you can do where that is concerned. But with a blood analysis, you're actually able to see a number of imbalances in the body. And I always tell persons that, you know, you have your regular bloods that are done. You know, you may have your CBC, which is your complete blood count. You may have your lipid profiles, that's going to look at your cholesterol, your triglycerides. You also have the liver aspects, which are going to look at your albumin and those type of things. You have the kidney aspect, where they might be looking at things like your creatinine, bond, potassium, those type of things. And those blood tests are respected. They can play a vital role in determining a number of issues in the body. However, the blood analysis gives you the opportunity to look at blood in its live state. And believe me, that is impressive, at least because of the amount of information it gives to the trained eye. Let me say, of course, a pleasant good evening to the entire team at Batson Associates, our consultants, Mr. Green, Ms. Ramdan, Mr. Bastamante, Mr. Vialva. Pleasant good evening to you guys. You know, these are our consultants, and to all the members of the team that actually help for us to do a good job with our clients. Miss Ann Hussein, good night to you. Miss Sharon Hill, she says she's watching. Good night to you. Miss Marlene Nabi, good night to you as well. Okay, so we have a question here. Life of Purpose, Kutara. Good evening, Dr. Batson. Can you explain what causes the blood pressure numbers to fluctuate? Okay, good question. All right. Well, remember, let me say, of course, a pleasant good evening to, as she's so faithfully known as Mother, Miss Kathleen Ishmael. She says, always a beautiful blessing. Same to you, my dear. A pleasant good evening to you. The reason why blood pressure fluctuates is because blood pressure is affected by a number of things. So your blood pressure is very volatile. So if it goes up a bit high when you are annoyed, when you're in traffic, when you have not slept well, so blood pressure is so volatile that there are a number of things that can actually affect it. Sleep, your mood, salt or sodium. So you may have a meal, for example, that may be a little on the salty side. It may not be something that you may have cooked. It may be something that you may have bought on the outside, and it may contain things that you know you might not cook for yourself, or things that you may not be accustomed consuming. And as a result of that, it can cause problems with the blood pressure. So blood pressure tends to fluctuate because of how volatile it is, especially from a psychosomatic perspective, where the brain and psychology and stress could actually affect one's blood pressure. Okay. Ms. Janelle Campbell says, what do you have for cataract? We carry a very good eye drop called Eye Optics Formula, and that is very good for cataract. There's also some other eye drops that we carry. Well, that particular one for the very mature cataracts that we'll be getting back shortly, and that is actually going to help significantly in helping individuals to be able to actually deal with those particular problems associated with that. You're very welcome, Life of Purpose. Short say tabanka and unnecessary stress can cause it to fluctuate. True, definitely. Mr. Dennis Roberts says, diuretic, a type of drug that causes the kidneys to make more urine. Diuretics help the body get rid of extra fluid and salt. They are used to treat high blood pressure, edema, extra fluid in the tissues, and other conditions. There are many different types of diuretic. Please explain this in terms of coffee. Okay, good. Good evening, Mr. Dennis. Yeah, the thing is, coffee has a diuretic effect because of its contents, primarily caffeine. So, as you so rightfully said, diuretics remove extra fluid from the body. But remember, diuretics have to work in a particular way. So, what diuretics do, the first thing that leaves the body in order for fluid to leave is what? Sodium. Right, so sodium leaves and water follows sodium. So the thing is, diuretics you would mention in the medical fraternity, diuretics are recommended for individuals, but it may not necessarily be to get extra fluid out of the body, because remember what happens is that in the case of coffee, for example, some people consume coffee every day. Some people consume 5, 6, 10 cups of coffee for the day. Now think of an individual doing this who may not be the healthiest. So they're not physically fit, they may not exercise, they may not go to the gym, they may not do any brisk walking. So generally, they are not a healthy individual. And then they may not eat well, they may eat badly, consume a lot of soft drinks, a lot of sugars, a lot of hydrogenated oil. Now take all of that into consideration and add to that consuming coffee on a daily basis. How could that, so that individual is not going to get a good outcome? You see, what a lot of persons have to take into consideration is that they love to compare what other people do and say that those other people are good. So in other words, you may have your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother may have been an avid coffee drinker. We know those persons, especially people who may have be a particular origin, like Caribs and certain people, they tend to use a lot of coffee. So you automatically assume that because they may have drank coffee and they have lived for years, 90s, hundreds and over 100, you assume that coffee is a good thing. What you have to understand, there is a saying, go Paul Lock is not, see Paul Lock. So they may have other factors that influenced or negated the negative effects of the coffee on a daily basis. They may exercise, they may have had good genetics, they may have eaten very well, and as a result of that, they were able to stand the test of time, for want of a better expression. A lot of persons now are not as fortunate because of the comorbidities, let's put it like that. That is a word that became very popular. I think before COVID, nobody knew what comorbidities was. I came across it before, but it's not something that was, it was used and it was really popularized after COVID. Okay, so if you have comorbidities or existing health problems, then it means there are certain things that you can do to make your situation worse. Yes, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas says they may have maintained healthy weight, and that's a big factor too. Yeah, when you look at not only that, the exercise that the generations before us did. Remember everything people drive for now. And Trinidadians have a mentality, in my mind, I think they're so lazy that they always try to look for the closest park. They would never park somewhere at distance and walk. They're looking for, they want, if they could park right in front of the door, they'll park right in front of the door. That is because it is no longer convenience again. That's basically laziness. Because you already do exercise. Or let me just say that. What I should say is that a lot of people maybe forget how important it is to have physical activity in their lives. Listen to me. Exercise is so, 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 so important. Okay, let me just run over quickly to a question. Miss Veronica Worrell asked the question. Good night. What causes calcium to be high in the body? There's actually a condition where you can have elevated blood calcium levels, and that is usually caused by thyroid problems. If you have hyperthyroidism, hyper, of course, meaning very high, the thyroid is the organ that is responsible for removing calciums from the warehouses of the body, which is your bones. Remember, calcium is stored in your bones in the form of calcium phosphate. Your bones are comprised of calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus in the form of calcium phosphate. So if you have a thyroid problem or a hyperthyroidism, it can actually cause excessive calcium to be taken out from the bones and end up in the bloodstream. And that, of course, is very problematic. Okay. Miss Kamala Samaru, good night to you as well. My very good friend, Miss Good evening to Miss Pauline McKenna. A pleasant good evening to you. Miss Monica Nicholas, she says, good night. Is restless legs and bad circulation the same? It's not necessarily, but they can be related. So in other words, someone may have restless legs syndrome and not have poor circulation, but someone can also have poor circulation and not have restless legs. So they're not the same. The feeling sometimes could be kind of similar where you have that junjuni, pins and needles, cramping your calves, burning under your feet, but they are not necessarily the same. The symptomology may be the same, okay, but the cause may be too different. With restless leg syndrome, you can have some aspect of poor circulation, but also neuropathy could also be a part of that particular situation as well. Okay. Chin Chin says, what causes my toes to twist up with serious pain under your feet? Toes getting a stroke out. That could be an indication of poor circulation. It could also be an indication of mineral deficiencies in the body. That is something that you should pay attention to. That could cause some serious problems later on. Okay, Miss Marcia Mendoza. She says, good night, Dr. Batson. My mother is 88 and is starting to forget. What can I use to stabilize her memory at this stage? I am a huge, huge advocate of compressed coconut oil. Huge, 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 huge. Because coconut oil plays a significant role in Alzheimer's. They proved that. I was actually looking at an article recently where they were speaking about the importance of multivitamins as it relates to Alzheimer's, where they say that taking a good multivitamin, good in inverted commas, can actually prevent Alzheimer's by about 65%. So that's something that you should look into, Miss Mendoza. Also, to the elderly, tend to give a little problems as it relates to hydration. Remember, water is everything, and water affects every single thing in the human body. So if you're not properly hydrated, you would find a situation where you can end up with serious poor circulation issues. Okay. Miss Marcia Ridge, he says, good night, Dr. Batson. Can you tell me about black walnuts or what black walnuts are good for? Okay, I'll come back to that in a little bit. Miss Sherry Ann Thomas says, good night, Dr. Batson. Can you please touch a bit on ashwagandha usage? Okay, ashwagandha. Once you get a good quality form of ashwagandha, because a lot of people do not know that the main ingredient or that component in ashwagandha, you have it in different percentages in different products. Of course, the higher the percentage, the more potent and efficacious. I mean, where potency and efficacy is, the product is. It's very good as aphrodisiac, so it does help with sexual function in both men and women. It is very good for nerves and emotional stability, that type of thing. In fact, our nerve restore product, actually, that's one of the ingredient profile in that excellent product. That's something we'll be getting back in stock shortly, and that is basically designed to help with sleep, anxiety, depression, a number of issues in the body. Okay, so that's something to pay very close attention to as well. So it is a very good thing to use. Your quality is very important. That's something that you need to focus on. Okay. Keep in mind again, we are live on our social media platforms. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. On YouTube, we are Batson and Associates Limited. And on Instagram, no, my apologies. We are Batson and Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson and Associates TT. On YouTube, we are Batson and Associates Trinidad. And on TikTok, we are Batson and Associates. Okay, nice. Let me see. Okay, Mr. Dennis Robert says, so can coffee bring down high blood pressure? Yes or no? Please explain. Mr. Roberts, well, it depends. In most instances, you find coffee can elevate one's blood pressure, but it depends. Remember, everyone may not necessarily have the same response. What I could definitely say, drinking too much of coffee is not healthy. There's no way, no how that could be healthy. Impossible, 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 impossible. We have to understand there are a number of things that are good for you. I'll give you an example. Aloes is good for you, right? Turmeric is good for you, right? Saffron is good for you. The list goes on. There are a number of things that are good for you. But there are dosages that you need to take, and you need to understand that people drink or over drink coffee. I'm not asking you. I've seen it on numerous occasions. If it is you drinking coffee maybe once a week, or you maybe, see, some people say it's a small amount. What a lot of persons can actually end up with is a situation where they overdo. The old people have a saying, too much of one thing isn't good for. They say nothing, but if you want the correct English, too much of one thing isn't good for anything at all. Correct? So you have to understand that word moderation, especially as it relates to what we're discussing. Okay, Mr. Kyle Thomas says, I read that it's good for ADDH and autism spectrum disorder. Yes, it is. It's good for a number of things. Very, very good. And yes, it is because of its ability as it relates to how it deals with the central nervous system. It actually significantly impacts the autonomic nervous system, which is your sympathetic, parasympathetic, and that plays a significant role in the central nervous system. Okay, Life of Purpose asks the question, do you know if ashwagandha contradicts blood pressure medications like amlodipine? It shouldn't. But I'll tell you something, what a lot of persons, and that's why we often recommend that you have a consultation or you do the blood analysis and those type of things, simply because you find that a lot of persons, depending on the medication that you're using, there are some things that you have to know how to use in terms of the dosage. There's a other very key component, and I'll discuss it in a little bit, which is something known as healing crisis. Healing crisis is when toxins try to leave your body faster than you would like them to leave. And that's a whole topic for discussion, but I'll touch on it on a little bit. Let me just go to Miss Pauline McKenna. She says, Marcia, you can check out a video on YouTube by Dr. Mary Newport. She used coconut oil to treat her husband's Alzheimer's disease. Yeah? That cold pressed coconut oil is amazing. And the thing is, you have to understand Alzheimer's is poor circulation in the brain. Remember, when you look at, if you do an MRI or a brain CT on someone who has Alzheimer's, you'll realize a lot of the blood vessels, they begin to harden. And when these blood vessels are hardening, it means their ability to transport oxygen and nutrients to different cells is significantly impeded or significantly affected. It is compromised. Okay, Miss Brenda Newton says, good night, Dr. Batson. Blessings in Jesus' name. I take that fully. Thank you so very much. Miss Katyan Samaru says, can I drink silver by itself? Yes, my dear, you can. A lot of persons who come to us, if you may have been using silver together with the inflammation formula, together with our advanced chlorophyll, those type of things, it is quite easy. If those are finished and you have the silver, you can just drink your silver in your water. That is very, very important, and it can help. Okay, Miss Kishona Cyrus. Good night, love. We need circulation, tea and tablets in Tobago. Yes, my dear, Tobago is going to be seen about very, very shortly. We're actually working on sending you guys stuff over for this month here. So just bear with us. We ensure that we're getting everything organized. We have your foot detox machines and a number of things to put there. We already started to operate in that office, but then there were some things that we needed to put as regards to our internet, our phone services, and those type of things. So we just had a little kickback where that is concerned, but we're going to be up and running with that in a very short space of time. So again, keep in mind you're listening to Dr. Jason Batson, the Senior Medical Director at Batson and Associates. We're going to continue. We're going to be this program is going to be 1 hour. I believe we started at. I'll check and see exactly where we started. Um, and of course, I'll try my best to answer as much questions as I can. Keep in mind, at Batson and Associates, we do not only deal with poor circulation and blood pressure, but I often tell persons, and this is something, there's a challenge that I love when persons come to us and they're very, very sick. And I look forward to see them after a month, 2 months, when they would have gotten results that they didn't even believe that they were capable of getting within such a short space of time. And that's not a boast, but I say it with a certain level of humility because I understand how it is to be sick. But I also understand that all of us desire to feel good and to be well, all of us. So if you know someone who is sick, especially a few programs are back, I did a program on uh, postmenopausal syndrome. And that's something that I want you ladies listening here, the ladies who are more mature, who have your friends, tell them about Batson Associates, let them at least go on and listen to our program, because these women are literally going crazy. They are being put on things like Zoloft and Revitril and amitriptyline. And if you know anything about medication, those things over an extended period of time is not good for you. It can cause so much problems because it actually affects and changes the brain chemistry in the body. So it's vitally important that you send some information to help someone. There are a lot of people out there suffering unnecessarily. Believe me, sometimes I get cases in front of me and I look at these people and they went to specialists. People went to specialists, spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they didn't get better. And the reason for that is that they did not deal with the root cause of the problem. Doesn't mean that you're going to have to do a little more work. Yes, it does. I'm not going to fool you and tell you it's a walk in the park. You are now responsible for your health. So it means now that you have to now make a concerted effort, a calculated effort, an informed effort in taking care of yourself. And that is what Batson and Associates does in terms of actually helping persons to be able to do that. Miss Joan Antwine, a blessed night to you. Miss Heather Prince, she says, good night, doc. What causes internal tremors? By central nervous system problem. We can fix that. Easy to fix. Okay. Just like persons who have depression. If I were to ask a question, what do you think causes persons to be depressed? How would you answer? Now, there are a number of things that causes depression. Worries, money problems, family problems. But if you are someone who's taking care of yourself mentally, your body is mentally and physically, from the perspective of anatomy and physiology, able to deal with it. But if it is your body is not capable of dealing with it, you are going to end up with a nervous breakdown. The majority of people who are in mental asylums, they're not mad enough. When doctors diagnose people with bipolar disorder and they tell you you have schizophrenia and all these kind of things, what you have is a mental situation where your central nervous system is incapable of handling the stress that is placed on your body, and depending on the part of the brain that is affected the most is going to determine the symptomology and the diagnosis that you get. You all understand that, or you want me to repeat it? And that is something that a lot of medical professionals do not understand. Don't be too quick to diagnose people with bipolar and tell them they're having bipolar and anxiety. And what you have is your central nervous system is incapable of handling the stress that has been placed on it. And as a result of that, you are going to end up with depression. You are going to end up with anxiety. You're going to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. You're going to be diagnosed with all sorts of things. But what you really have, essentially, basically, is a nervous breakdown. Riaramkisune, reductions in serotonin levels in the brain. That's one of the things. There's also something known as neurotoxins. there are pathogens that can find themselves in your gastrointestinal system, which can eventually end up all over your body, and they can actually poison your nerves. Hence the reason they are called neuro or nerve toxins or nerve poisons. Okay. Alendria Bailey says, "Good night, Dr. Batson. Thank you so much for everything. I never felt this better now than before, and I will be back getting more gastro tea and wheatgrass powder for sure." Okay, so this Alendra Bailey came to us, and apparently she got some really good results. I'm so glad to hear that. Miss Ria Hariki, soon as she mentioned that aspect with the reduction of the serotonin levels in the brain. Thank you so very much for that. Miss Shirley Dorset, she says, "Blessing Dr. Batson and team. Thank you for always being present for us." You're welcome, my dear. You're very, very welcome. So, we're very close to bringing our program to an end. I'm going to give you guys an hour tonight. As I said, I do apologize about yesterday, but you know it is. We have so many, or I rather have so many commitments, even family commitments as well. But we were able, or I was able rather, to keep my promise to come to you guys this evening, and to share the necessary information. Yes, we're going through a little issue. We are not the only ones, with in terms of our products, in terms of clearance and that type of thing. But we are working assiduously on that. Believe me, the type of person I am, I don't play games. I don't have time for that. We have serious business to do. We have a lot of people to help, and we need to get our stuff. Okay, guys. And one of the things too as well, yeah, Shaz says wheatgrass is a boss. It definitely is. This is Miss Elizabeth Nandlal. Hey Doc, good night. Good night to you, Miss Nandlal. Imagine Hanaway says, "Do you do walk-ins or appointments only?" No, we do walk-ins as well. Just keep in mind, Miss Emma Jean Hanaway, if you plan to do a walk-in, but you plan to do the consultation alone, well, then you can eat at any time. That's not a problem. But if you plan on doing that package that we have with the live nutritional blood cell analysis, we call it our executive package, live blood analysis, dry blood analysis, which gives us the opportunity to look at what is known as your biological terrain. Everyone who does a blood analysis, when they really see what it has the ability to determine, they are impressed, because what I like about it is that it is participative in the sense that you actually get to see your blood in real time. Now, why is that important? It is important because blood is the greatest witness in the body. Blood is like a real extra fast Trinidadian, which goes all about the place and pick up people information and mind the business. And then when a trained blood microscopist, like those who work at Batson and Associates, actually put that sample up there, based on their experience and the skill eye that they have, they're actually able to unravel a lot of the problems or the causes of the problems that you have in the body. Very, very important. Don't take that for granted. It gives us an in-depth ability. Before I answer your question and continue, let me give you an example. There was a client who came to us. She was a young lady. I always tell people about this. And when she came with her parents, and they took this young lady to a whole set of specialists. When I tell you specialists, I mean specialists. They came with a file, must be this stick in my office to me. And one of the things that it actually has the ability to one of the things that they did is that they went to different specialists. They went to neurologists. The problem is that she was having severe headaches for about 5 years. Now, based on my training, I immediately looked at the individual and know what was wrong with them. I just needed to dot my I's and cross my T's with the blood analysis, right? Which was done for me, and I just did the review. And what this individual had is that their entire organs of elimination, all 7 organs of elimination, was severely inflamed. So they had serious issues. Your 7 organs of elimination are your kidney, your colon, your bloodstream, your liver, your lymphatic system, your skin, and your lungs. I'll say it again. Your 7 organs of eliminations is kidney, colon, bloodstream, liver, lymphatic system, skin, and your lungs. So it means that when we looked at this blood analysis, this person, all the blood cells were clumping. This person's blood was in a mess. It was in a mess. I was not surprised that they were sick. And they had other problems and other complaints, but it just came specifically for that particular issue with the headaches. And what we were actually able to do in a month time is that this young lady no longer had headaches. She has been our client for maybe about 3 years now, and the headaches never came back. And that's because we dealt with the root cause of the problem. Now she had to understand some things as regards to drinking proper water, as regards to cleansing and detoxifying the body, and so many other things. But when she saw the blood analysis, she understood why she was so ill for so long. And that's just to help you to understand, how important it is. As regards the cost, well, you all know I don't, in these programs, I don't ever say cost. What you can do is actually get onto our offices and they will actually be able to give you the costs. Okay, Miss Susie Sampson, Miss Allison Thomas says, love the definition of blood. Miss Rihanna Francis says, Doc, can blood analysis show you active cancer cells? Um, what I would say is that it can show an environment that is conducive to cancer. Let me put it like that. Cancer needs a particular environment to flourish, especially in the gastrointestinal system. So what the dry blood analysis actually does, it shows something known as biological terrain. And in that aspect of biological terrain, we can actually see if you are a candidate for cancer, for want of a better expression. So in a case like that, we can send you now to do cancer screenings to further, I wouldn't say confirm, that's not the word I want to use, but give us further information to be able to assist you. Cancer needs high inflammation in order to flourish. So most people who have cancer, their ESRs are very high. What is ESR? It stands for erythrocyte sedimentation ratio. Okay. Um, uh, so in that particular case, Miss Alicia Beverly Simon says, how does ashwagandha play a part during menopause? It can help during menopause because it has adaptogenic properties. But again, you have to look at your dosage and it has to be the individual that you're dealing with, because in some cases, some people could take it and because of the amounts, it needs to be introduced into the body in a particular way. Okay. Miss Jean John McDonald says, my daughter had headaches for years until she started getting seizures. What can I do? Exactly. Gil, I need to bring her to Batson and Associates. That's where you need, it's going to be better. And seizures is something that I plan to discuss in our next program. We're seeing more and more persons getting seizures. Seizures are not accidents. When you start getting seizures, it is an indication that your central nervous system is begging and bawling for help, and it is indeed um, significantly compromised. It can be fixed, but we need to do specific work. So, Miss Jean John McDonald, I hope you heard that and try and see if you could help her, because the medication that they normally recommend for seizures, things like Epilim, Dilantin, and those type of things, and those are serious medication that have long-term effect. So you need to pay very close attention to that. Becca says, good night, Dr. Batson, and all listeners. Good night to you, Becca. Miss Cindy Hoyt, she says, good night, Doc, and everyone. Coming in late for school. Still 1 hour behind. Yes, my dear. That's Cindy Hoyt from Canada. Good evening to you. Jane John McDonald says, okay, I will. Yes. Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that, my dear. Because that type of medication could interfere with a number of things. So let's try and help her as fast as we can and get that out of the system. What I suggest you do with her from now, Miss Jane John, is let her up her water intake. I don't know what type of child she is. If she's someone who drinks water, but a lot of these children now don't like water simply because they don't understand how important it is. But it is something that will start to help the situation. Miss Marcia Letrin says, good night, Dr. Batson, sorry, eye optics are very good. My eyes are healed. I will give you all the story one day. I thank you all and my God. You're very welcome. So, guys, again, those telephone numbers. So we are about to end our program. It's only an hour I'll be giving you guys, or able to give you guys tonight. Let me say, of course, thank you very much. Or she doesn't drink a lot of water. Yeah, so I know that. So that's something you need to work on, Miss McDonald. Try and get her to understand the importance of drinking water. Hydration is everything. Miss Micheline Cyrus says blood analysis is very interesting. Yes, it is. In fact, let me say something quickly before I wrap up. Do you know that blood analysis is something some years ago that they used to do in hospitals? And they actually stopped doing it because they found it was too time consuming, because it does take some time, you know. When we bring you in Batson Associates and we put you to sit down, it's not because we want you to spend time with us. Yes, we're glad to see you, but we want you to get your stuff done and, you know, get you to your homes or wherever you need to go as soon as possible, as effective and efficient as possible. However, we need to ensure that we are responsible where we get all the information to give you the best help possible. And that's why the majority of our clients get well, and that is why we get so many persons who come to us simply because we are very thorough in what we do. Mr. Courtney Park is saying, why must the eye optics formula be kept in the fridge? Okay, good. That is something that we started recently telling our clients to do. And the reason for that is because of the heat that we're experiencing now. And what happens with a lot of persons is that some people, their house is very hot. And because of that heat, it's going to affect the eye drop. So the type of person I am, I believe an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And we want you to get the best out of your product. So refrigerate it. Okay. Miss Elizabeth Nanlal says, can eye optics help with floaters in the eyes? Yes, they can. They most certainly can. So again, let me give you those telephone numbers and locations. Keep in mind, God's willing, I would be in the Shagona's office this Wednesday. I'll be doing reviews and consultation. So if you're planning on coming to give us a visit, then you can do so. Keep in mind, we also have our consultants there to do your blood analysis, your magnetic resonance analysis, and your consultation. Those telephone numbers and locations, we are located on the first floor of Money Talks building. That's Money Talks building in Montrose, Chagonas. That telephone number is 222-8261. That's 222-8261. St. James is Red Edge Mall, Western Main Road, St. James. That number for St. James is 220-8113. Debe is, of course, the corner of Rams, Mooch Trace, and the SS Erie Main Road in Debe. That telephone number for Debe is 223-7515. That's 223-7515. And Tobago, of course, is the Triangle Building in Scarborough, Tobago. That number for Tobago is 226-4553. Trish says, can eye optics help with retinopathy? Retinopathy. Yes, it can. Detached retina. Retinal detachment is something that a lot of diabetics experience, and we have successfully treated a number of persons for that. So the eye optics formula does help with that. It helps with retinotis pigmentosa, where it could actually delay that disease that really blinds you after a period of time. It's very good for cataracts. It's very good for inflammation in the back of the eyes, which is something that a lot of diabetics also experience as well. Bleeding in the eyes, yes, it can help. And that is something that we have also successfully treated. What I would say is that you cannot use eye optics formula alone. We need to do a protocol for that, because if you have bleeding in the eye, it is an indication of high inflammatory response in your cerebral hemisphere, which is never a good thing. It means that person can be prone to strokes, they can be prone to blood clots, they can be in a lot of problems. Okay. So you have been listening to Dr. Jason Batson, the Senior Medical Director at Batson and Associates. And we're going to have more of these lives with you guys. We're kind of changing up in terms of the radio programs that we're doing and that type of things. Yes, we do have eye optics in stock. So you guys can get. We also have balanced circulation. That's an excellent product. We usually carry a number of circulation products. Balanced circulation is one that we have in stock. There's a capsule circulation that works really good for blood pressure. It helps with pins and needles, cramping in your calves, swelling in your feet, that type of thing. God's willing, very soon we'll be getting back circulation regeneration tea. That's one of my favorite products because I love it. It tastes really good and it really works for circulation, especially especially hypertension as well. So we getting things done, we get in there. As I said, we're going to have your guys' products in stock. Just make sure and call the office, leave your name for whatever product you may use, and as soon as we get it, we ensure that we call you guys. Okay, Miss Sharon Hill, she says, shalom to everyone. Trish says, thank you. Miss Marcia Mendoza, as I said, she asked, do you have in stock? Yes, we do have in stock. Miss Elizabeth Nandlal, Doc, can you treat psoriasis and COPD? I have 2 friends with these conditions. Yes, we can, and very successfully at that. So let me bid you guys a pleasant good evening. Those of you who have joined us, excellent, and thanks for your time, because I know Monday evening you're either in your bed or lying down relaxing, and of course maybe listening to this program. So like our live, share it, because someone you may know may have a problem that we are discussing. Interestingly, when I did a program last week on postmenopausal syndrome, I actually touched on surgical menopause, and there was this lovely lady who came and saw us, and she said, Dr. Atson, I believe I experienced that. I never heard anybody spoke about it, and then when you spoke about it, I realized that this was the place for me, and she came for us to help her. So you don't know who could hear this, you don't know who might need this, so feel free to share. Remember, as we always say at Batson & Associates, if you think health is expensive, try sickness. If you think education is expensive, try ignorance. God bless you guys, and do enjoy the rest of your evening. What's that say?
Pay attention to all our deals on social media.
Okay, good. So as Shakil have reminded me there, pay attention to our deals that we have on social media. We actually have some specials for you guys. We have the food detox. That food detox special is still going, or that's finished?
It has finished.
Okay.
We have a grand one jump in.
Okay, so what you guys can do again is check out our Facebook. Remember, we are Batson & Associates Limited on Facebook. On Instagram, we are Batson & Associates TT. On YouTube, we are Batson & Associates Trinidad. And on TikTok, we are Batson & Associates. Ms. Marcia Mendoza says, great evening to you and the staff of Batson & Associates Limited. See you soon. You as well, my dear. Miss Sherry Ann Thomas says, good night, Doc. Thanks for all the info. You're very welcome, Miss Veronica Worrell. Thank you and have a good night. So, guys, take care. God bless.